Number 1. Ghost in the back seat. It was in 1995 in rural Northants, England. My daughter Abby, then 17, had just passed her driving test, and so we bought a little second-hand car. One morning, at about 4:15 a.m., I was ready to set off for work. Our driveway was only one car wide, and my daughter, as worryingly usual at that age, had returned home late in the evening, parking behind my car. This meant I had to start her car up, back it out before backing my own out, and then putting her car out in the driveway. This one morning, I'd backed hers out, leaving her engine running and the driver's door open, which meant the interior light was on. I should mention it was still dark outside. I walked back to reverse my own car, but happened to look back at Abby's car. I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw a young lady sitting in the near side back seat. It was a two-door car. Seemingly, she was studying her makeup and pampering. This was full color, nothing gray nor translucent. I thought, what on earth? Or such like, and immediately ran toward the car only to find no one there. I often wondered that her spirit was still there, but my own rationale had blocked my perception. I only told Abby many years later, as I didn't want to scare her. To my surprise, she said she was usually aware of a benign presence behind her when she was driving that car. Number 2. Black Cloud Spirit. We moved into a house that used to be part of a military base in Kearns, Utah. I heard that in the 1970s, there was a two-plane crash above that neighborhood. Also, there is a serial killer who lives around there right now that the police have not been able to catch. Those are things that can be proved. This next part, you'll have to take my word. For about a year in my house, little things like sounds and lights going on and off would happen daily. I was good with that, but I started drinking and being sad all the time for no reason. And then all hell broke loose. One night, I was drinking with a friend, and I invited the spirit to hang with us. Big mistake. I don't know, but my friend told me my eyes turned black, and I started speaking another language. She got scared and immediately went home. A few nights later, a black cloud filled my room. I shook my husband and told him I was terrified. He sat straight up, looked me in the eye, and said with a deeper voice than his own, "I am not your husband." I was scared as hell. He later said he could feel that happen as if he were not in control of his own body. Another time, I was having a conversation with some type of evil spirit in my head while I was unable to move my body and barely able to have my own thoughts. The conversation was basically telling me to deny God. I denied the demonic advances and begged God for help. The spirit left, as if he ran with fear. Numerous things such as that kept happening to the point I would have my children stay with my grandparents, and I was too afraid to shower or do anything alone. I had some church people come by and bless my home, and I was told to quit drinking, which I did. Later that same night, a demonic voice was outside my bedroom window telling me to let him in. With authority, I screamed no. And we have since moved. But I know that it is an evil place. And I hope the best for anyone who lives there next. Number 3. Answer from another dimension. On September 30th, 2015, I went to the grocery store to pick up a few things to complete lunch and dinner that day. I purchased 1 purple onion, 1 Vidalia onion, a pack of thin bread slices, a carton of eggs, and 1 brown mustard. That afternoon, I made a sandwich using 1 slice of purple onion. I cut off the root end and took 1 additional slice for my sandwich. I returned the purple onion to my refrigerator bin for later use. The next morning, I opened my fridge. The onion was no longer in the bin. It was on the shelf where I first placed it when I initially brought it home. And it was whole and uncut. No one had entered my home to replace the onion. I stood at the door of my fridge with a chill going up my spine and down my arms. I stepped back to think and immediately went to my garbage to confirm I used the purple onion the day before. There I found the butt end of the purple onion I cut off earlier. It may not be a significant story with a major leap in time, but the weeks before this event I had begun researching string theory and asking out loud if there was anyone who could hear me within another dimension to try and communicate with evidence. I don't want to sound crazy, but until it happens to you, everyone who experiences something similar is a flake. This really happened. I took pictures, and I wish I had the ability to match the DNA of the onion to the end, as I still have them. I can't get past the event, and it has completely reoriented my life focus. Number 4. Ouija spirit provides proof. It was around August 13th or 15th when this happened. I was 14. It happened in Vero Beach, Florida. Now, I'm completely open to the spiritual world and paranormal stuff. It runs in my family, coming from a long line of what people would call witches. I love playing with Ouija boards. I think it's so cool to talk with spirits. Well, I was over at my aunt's place with my mom and 2 of my aunts, both of which live there, and we decided to play with the Ouija board. We got connected with the first spirit almost instantly, but he was a bust. He spoke Creole, which none of us playing with the Ouija board spoke. Another spirit connected with us instantly after we said goodbye to the last one. This one was a little girl. We talked to her for at least an hour. Her name was Ava, and during that hour conversation, we just asked her normal questions like, "How old are you? Why are you here in this house?" etc. And then it started getting weird. My aunt has 2 cats and 3 dogs. The 2 cats ran from one of my aunt's rooms to the back door, which is in the kitchen, where my back was facing. I was wondering why the cats ran so abruptly and randomly over there and just sat there staring at the top of the door. So I proceeded to ask Ava, the spirit, if we were alone. She told us no. She said that there was someone by the door. I understood, and it was the spirit we had said goodbye to earlier, the one that didn't speak English, so she couldn't tell him to go away. I then asked if she was standing with the man by the door, and she told us no. I asked her where she was standing or sitting, and she said, by a dog. Like I said, my aunt has 3 dogs, one light fawn color, one dark brown, and one light brown. I asked her which dog, and she said dark brown. The dark brown dog was sitting on the couch behind my mother. I asked Ava if she was behind the blonde woman, because my mother was blonde at the time, and she said yes. I asked her to prove it, and she touched my mom's shoulder and pushed a jacket off the lamp next to my mother. My mother was immediately covered in goosebumps, and her hair was standing on end. Soon we found out all Ava wanted was to cross over because her grandfather left her behind when he had crossed. Number 5. Ghost of the Haunted Maze. I was working in a Halloween time haunted house called the Theater of the Lost Souls in Shelley, Idaho. I happened to be working in a pitch-black maze on opening night when I started to hear someone rubbing against a black plastic covering inside the maze. I assumed that it was just my cloak and abandoned the thought that a ghost was right behind me. However, the thought of me running my cloak against the covering left me after I started hearing footsteps walking right behind me. I had the guy running the monitor go and check all the cameras in the maze at about 9:30, because that's when I heard all the footsteps. He checked them a couple of times and said that I was the only one in there all that time. Number 6. Family history of paranormal events. There have been many paranormal and supernatural experiences in my family. I will start out with my dad's stories, from oldest to newest. When my dad was young, about 7 years old, he was camping in Missouri with his family, mother, father, sister, when a cowboy-looking guy walked up to their camp and asked if he could warm up by the fire. He spent about 3 hours talking and trading stories with everyone. He also had a white lab dog with him. All of a sudden, he said he had to go, so he started walking away. My dad was about to ask if he would stay the night when the cowboy disappeared into the forest with his dog. Later, when the camping came to an end, they asked about the man and his dog. As it turned out, they both had died in a flood of the nearby river years earlier. Another story was in the early 1990s, while my father was skateboarding with his 2 friends, Tim and Ryan. They saw in the sky a giant cloud, but oddly enough, it was shaped just like a Chinese dragon. Its eyes even reflected somehow, as if it was a real Chinese dragon in the middle of the Iowa sky. He said he could see his own reflection in the eyes of the white cloud-like dragon, a long snake-like body with horns like a bull and sharp claws like raptor's talons, sharp cat-like teeth, and even fish-like scales. But the part that stood out was its oddly human-like reflecting eyes. Now, this next story about him doesn't take place in one period of time, but throughout most of his life as a child. His bedroom was in an attic, and he says that the attic was haunted by a spirit of a loved one that every night would tuck him in while he was asleep, pulling blankets over him and putting his head on pillows. Here are some of my experiences. We used to have a dog named Megan, a black lab and a sweetheart. When I was 11 and she was about 8, a table flew off the floor and hit her in the body. A big wooden coffee table just flew at her. She was fine, but whatever did that did not like dogs. Another time, around 2011, I was hiking with my father and sister at a park called Riverside in Iowa. I was standing there while my dad talked to my sister. I saw a large, dark figure poking out of the bushes. It had a big dark mane like a lion, and a thick, but oddly anteater-like face, dark black eyes and hooves. About a year later, in that same forest, I found hoof prints in the dirt, but it was as if they were left by something walking on its back legs. One of the strangest stories happened to me around 2013. My dad was having a bad day. He owed rent he couldn't pay, so he was being sued by the bank, and from there on, it just got worse. He punched a big hole in the wall out of rage. His hand was bleeding, and he wiped it on the wall. Little did he know, he had summoned a demon. The blood on the wall, mixed with a rage far beyond normal, summoned a strange wolf demon. In his sleep, the demon attacked him. It had dark red eyes, fur as black as coal, a wolf's body, but it had strange human hands, white skin-colored human hands. It talked to my dad and said it was older than the human race. When my dad woke up, he thought it could have been a dream, until he saw the giant hand-shaped bruises around his neck. Number 7. Rotting Cemetery Ghoul. One of my many experiences happened a few nights ago. I live in a small town near Canyon City, Colorado. I had been with a few friends, walking from a showing of the Rocky Horror Picture Show. We were walking around down Main Street, and it was about 2:30 a.m. There were 6 of us: Lane and his boyfriend, Brad, Raven, October, Christoph, and myself. I go by Kitty, or Kitten. This was October of 2015. We were walking, and the street was dark and deserted. Being us, more emo, punkish in style and mentality, we were telling our morbid jokes and stories and such. We passed by Main without a problem, and soon found ourselves at the local cemetery, a place I hadn't been since I was locked in a crypt 2 years before. I've always been sensitive to ghosts and paranormal happenings, so the fact that my spirit guide, Geo as I call him, was wandering behind me was no surprise. All of my friends know of my encounter with being locked in a crypt with some not-so-friendly spirits, but they decided to wander into the cemetery anyways. Geo had given the okay, and since I was with a group of people, I was also okay. We were wandering, and Christoph is also very sensitive to the paranormal. He spotted the man first. I had an odd feeling, a feeling I normally get when a spirit is around. I looked up as Christoph pointed the man out. I looked at the man, who was dressed in a rotted suit and had his bones showing. He was terrifying. I immediately latched on Christoph's arm, as he is a bigger guy. The man locked eyes with me, then disappeared, and reappeared closer than before. I let out a blood-curdling scream and started shaking violently. Now, mind you, I am very hard to scare, but I was trembling in fear. I felt as though I would pass out, and my knees grew weak and I sank down. I started bawling then. I wasn't exactly sure why I felt so scared. Everyone froze as the words rang out. "Where's Abby?" We watched as the man slowly limped towards us. Christoph wasted no time whisking me up, as I was too weak to stand, and carried me out of the cemetery, and the rest of the group following closely. The man didn't follow us, but I was traumatized. It wasn't my first encounter with that man, as he was the one who trapped me in the crypt 2 years before.